in the transition to low carbon climate resilient development pathways, the future which we anticipate, energy is going to be very important. But what kind of energy is that? The renewables. We have one problem, is that we have very exciting program called Mission 300. But is it going to be possible? So that's why we are calling it, can we make it this impossible mission? Because we have seen there are almost 25 renewable energy and energy initiatives in Africa. And all of them are decided with a lot of money to address the energy access, the energy crisis which we face. 600 million people across Africa to have energy. But they are failed. So our very honest, our very honest belief is that this mission is going to be possible. Have we figured out the role of the civil society, the role of the people? How do we arrogate ourselves the responsibility of really providing that monitoring? But there is one thing, access is very important. Access, number two, affordability. So these are the things we have to tackle. Investors will be very happy in putting a lot of money into, electricity line, this installation, because that is massive investment. But it just ends there. Access and affordability. So that is what we need as the civil society to be providing. So our role here, I'm not going to be an investor as Praja to go to tell people, okay, let us go and take, we store electricity to you. But we'll ensure that, yes, we ask questions of this partnership about accessibility and affordability.
I'm standing in for my director, Professor Anthony Young, who unfortunately has to attend some other meetings at the moment. Now, I think in the interest of time, I'd like to lay out a few things. First and foremost, I would say that we can agree that it's better late than never, because this M300 Energy Summit probably should have happened 20 years ago. At the very minimum, it probably should have happened 60 years ago, when most of our countries got independence. Now, chances are that they did happen, or whatever form of summit happened. But then the question is, if we're doing it again now, what is going to be different this time? And how is it going to be possible that we commit to an ambitious goal of reducing by 50% the number of people without access to electricity? So what we want to do in 5 years is what we have not been able to do in 60 years. I would really like here, because, how do we make impossible possible? And it's not a question of, is it possible or not? Because that would be a simple yes or no. But it's actually a very deep question, and that begs the answer. And the answer is, it depends. It is possible, but it depends. And I think what the conversation we are having this day, yesterday, today, and in the coming days here in Tanzania, it's the question of, what does it depend on? We have made efforts in the past. Some of our previous leaders have tried, whether at the continental level or even within our country. Some have made relative progress. Some have not made much progress. And I think it's very important to be able to ask ourselves, what were the challenges and what do we need to do differently going forward? But I want to give you a bit of a context. I think sometimes when we talk about the energy crisis in Africa, the easiest thing to say is that 600 million people do not have access to electricity. And I think in a way, that itself it's bad, because I want you to put it in a perfect context. Well, the number has now been revised, so it's now 571 million people because of the progress that we have made in the last few years. But I want you to take note of these numbers. 571 million people without access. Globally, the total number of people without access to electricity is 685 million people. So 571 million out of the 685 are in Africa globally. And that represents 83% of the global electricity deficit. And that is not just in Africa, it is sub-Saharan Africa. And I think, because I want us to unpack it, to understand the complexity, and perhaps we can get to a point where we have to agree that we have to solve this problem whichever way, by all means possible. Why is the African Development Bank interested in this conversation? We are considered that if transformation, and I mean economic and social transformations, if it's our goal, or also what we call poverty reduction or economic prosperity, whatever we consider to be our goal, our development ambition as a continent, it cannot happen without energy. No country ever grows in the dark, as our president will put it. And we need the light. And the electricity is not just to power our homes. The electricity is linked to our healthcare system. It is linked to our transport system. It is linked to our social protection system. It is linked to our ability to competitively trade. And so this is very important.
I'll start with my name. My name is Dr. Melania Chiponda. Women and the poor people, they are suffering, living in energy poverty. And my brother here is coming from the academic space. We know how complicated it is to extend the grid to rural areas, because our rural settlements, most of them are not linear. So it becomes a nightmare for our governments to even stretch that reach to get to rural areas. So we'll start here.
From our angle, really looking from the angle of energy efficiency, but also renewable energy efficiency, but also promoting the renewable energy mix itself. We look at nature-based solutions, not just to address the issue of renewable energy mix, but also to address the issue of contribution to biodiversity loss. You see a lot of energy for cooking in Africa, in Tanzania, is from biomass fuel. And lots of trees are chopped down. So it's not just a concern from the angle of health, but also a concern from the angle of deforestation, contributing to greenhouse gas emissions. And we are now looking at, really meeting the 1.5 degrees, climate promise. So you would see there are many angles all coming together to push the ambition to address the issue of energy, to speak to our own very context. You see, we really need to look at that even as we discuss on this, how we reach the 300 people, to ensure that whatever we discuss, at those very good high levels and, scientifically with our, academicians, whatever, how are they translated to be able to reach the very person down on the ground, on the rurals of Zimbabwe, Namibia, Tanzania?
So access is a big problem. So if a country says we have 60% connections, maybe not connection, access 60%, the question is, how can you quantify that? So there are cases where actually the power is passing through the village, but is it really connecting to these people? So we have a big problem with connections. People are not connected, even though the transmission line is passing through the region or a village or whatever. So there's a big problem of access. Affordability is a big problem also. So power is actually expensive. So you connect, you transmit the line to the village, but are these villagers able to actually bring this power to their household?
Like what others have said, actually, it's about the issue of accessibility and affordability. You find that our communities, or we can say most of us, we are poor. Our societies are poor. And
who can make these societies rich? It's the governments. For example, there in Tanzania, is TANESCO, they've managed to provide electricity almost in a lot of villages. But you can see that electricity is just used for lighting, And most of them, they can't afford actually to pay the bills. So it means that in this case, economy there, you have to do something about uplifting the economy of the people so that they can afford that.
He talked about the importance of this connectivity to catalyze transformative change in rural communities, whereby women, youth, will have access to whether it's digital services, online education, the opportunities, the e-commerce, all will come to the community through this connectivity that we are looking forward to, which means the issue of finance should come in very clear. How do we get this?
We have seen from the beginning, the concept is about energy security. That is very great. We are supposed to speak about energy sovereignty. Understand? We are speaking about energy security. This is about accessibility. How accessible it is from what you said before. You find like you go in the village, you find someone have instant power, and then he or she doesn't have the money to light that power. So that is the challenge. I think the concept should involve the issues pertaining to availability, accessibility, utilization, stability, affordability. How are we going to involve around those matters? So that's what I could advise on that. But also, I think regarding on the issues of renewable energy, our countries should reduce or remove, the tariffs or taxes from the importation of the renewable energy materials. The importation taxes are very high. So what are we going to expect? Like a final consumer buying the solar panel, buying installing the hydro power. How is that going to be affordable? How is that going to be accessible? And then at the same point, the tax is very high. Thank you.
One important aspect toward helping people to be able to access energy is a political will, because it requires policy change, it requires commitment, financing. So for him, I think the success that Tanzania is getting, especially in clean cooking, is because of the political will that the president herself is trying to put the pressure so that people can be transformed. So I think, putting investment in the hands of the people, the local people, is very important toward ensuring sustainable energy access. Thank you.
We're Africans. I hope there's no Muzungu here. And we can talk to ourselves. Let's consider this to be a family meeting. Sometimes we are expecting the money and the savings of other people to solve our own problem. And that's the position behind borrowing. When you borrow money from Asia, from America, that is coming from the savings of those people to solve the problem that is very critical to us. I think we need to change the model completely.
Maybe we need to take it critically moving forward. It could be a PhD thesis, I don't know. It could be something that we need to dig deeper, down and see what has worked, what has not worked, and how can we go about it. I think that's very critical. We should not that's a very critical point that has been raised by the young man. And I'm looking at my colleague from, ADB colleague. We need to discuss further on this one and see how we work around, the glitches that has caused the powerhouse not to, the Power Africa not to realize what has been put before.
We are obviously talking about the communities, the people who are on the ground. Where are they in this very big discussion? How are we going to address their issues? What are their needs? So I think we really need practical solution, localized kind of discussion.
So the point I'm trying to raise is that we seem to be having the same conversation over and over again, setting the same goals, issuing the same declarations, and then we'll meet here 13 years from now, will be 2033, and then we'll have M600. Sorry for falling to the group that is raising the concern and the critique, but I think we need to have a frank conversation across board, both from the government side, from the bank side, the MDB, the World Bank, the civil society, that what are we not doing right? Midika mentioned the question of tracking. We can't start tracking now if we don't know what happened to the Power Africa initiative, where if you look at the data that is being provided there about the amount of billions that were spent, the amount of billions that were committed, both from the USAID, the 25 or 35 experts that were supposed to be positioned in different countries. So when we're in these spaces, we need to ask what is new in the solutions that you're providing. The commitment, the question the two colleagues have raised about the funding question. Where is the money gonna come from? These spaces, what end up happening is that you have all these kind of shiny commitments that don't translate to anything substantive. Then we meet here again 5 years from now, then having the same conversation. So in terms of forward-looking and solution, providing some kind of option for solution, I think that it is important to take a step back and do some rear mirror analysis about all these energy initiatives that have been proposed over the last 10-15 years. Why have they not worked? And based on that, because if you build your house in a swampy place, it collapses, and then you're building it again, you need actually to ask yourself, right? So that's my thought, really, that it's really important that we reflect about why some of these ideas that are being put on the table, their viability of success. When we talk about is this mission impossible or mission possible, the viability of the success of those solutions will depend on what is the innovativeness of those ideas in comparison to other ideas that have not worked before, and those that have not worked, have they not worked because there was no money? So where are we going to get the money? Because that question is going to still remain. The question of political will, the question of participation, all these questions, I think, that are making previous solutions not work, need to be put on the table, seriously interrogated, so that when we are making new proposals, they are coming from a position where we know where we are coming from and why some of these things have not worked. Thank you.